The leaves are falling from the trees outside my window. I love this time of year in our little town. The leaves are all beautiful colors of red, orange, and yellow, and when the sun shines through them, they look like they're on fire as they fall to the ground. Sarah is out for a run right now. She's been doing that more and more lately. Our house has felt different for a while now, but I can't quite put my finger on when that started. Her phone just went off. I can hear it buzzing on the kitchen counter. Again. Caroline calling about the charity gala, I bet, I say, getting up from my seat. Sarah was working on it for weeks after all. She loved doing that sort of thing. I held her phone in my hand. Another message notification appeared on the screen. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about it. My heart skipped a beat. I had never looked through my wife's phone before. I trusted her, but this... I hesitated for a moment. Missing our lunch meetings, your office or mine tomorrow? I felt dizzy. I grabbed hold of the kitchen counter to steady myself. My whole world was crumbling around me. He doesn't suspect anything. You're in the clear. I swiped up on the screen, then entered Sarah's passcode. It was our wedding anniversary. What I found there shattered me. There were multiple conversations with different men. Jason, Mark, and even my friend Caroline. Some of them had been going on for months, even years. She had been meeting Jason at his house while I was at work, sneaking out to see Mark during her lunch breaks, and lying to me about spending time with her friends when she was actually with Caroline, who was helping her cover her tracks. Oh God, I say, like I'm praying to a God that's not there. I checked the time and date of the first message and saw that it was from 3 months ago. That was the same time Sarah had started going for runs at night. It was the same time she started going out for more charity meetings. It was the same time she started sleeping with her back turned towards me. I heard the front door open and Sarah's voice echoed through the house. Mike, are you home? I didn't answer. Hey there, Sarah says. She's smiling, upbeat. She enters the kitchen, her hair tied in a neat ponytail, her running clothes looking impeccable, like she hadn't actually been running. You want to do takeout later? We could try that new Thai spot. I looked up at her, seeing her face, and then into her eyes. She looked at me, smiling until she noticed the phone in my hand. What the fuck? Why do you have my phone? 3 months. How long ago you fucked Jason for the first time? In his pool house. Her face went pale for a second. Then she shook her head and said, I don't know what you're talking about. Have you been reading my emails? Private messages? I chuckle, my voice sounding foreign to me. Is that what you're doing? And Mark? Were those lunches private too? Sarah's expression faltered for a moment, but then she stood up straighter, her chin raised defiantly. You had no right to go through my phone. You had no right to ruin our marriage. And yet, here we are. I set the phone down on the counter that separates us. Now, hold on. It's not what you think, she says, but I stop her. No, don't lie to me. Not now. I comb my fingers through my hair. I'm still shaking. Caroline covered for you. She knew. Sarah's face darkened. Caroline knows that a marriage isn't always what it looks like from the outside, that sometimes people need... Need what, Sarah? Need to spit on our memories? Need to humiliate me with our friends there watching and helping? I hear a car door slam outside. I didn't want to hurt you, Sarah says, touching my arm. I took a couple steps back, putting the island between us. But you did it anyway, many times, with many people. What are you going to do? The sun streamed in through the window, casting a long shadow across the floor. I'm calling Victor, I say finally, taking my own phone out of my pocket. He's our buddy, but more importantly, he's the best divorce lawyer in Pineville. She was really starting to break. Mike, please, we can work through this. We can get counseling. You should have thought of that 3 months ago. I open up my phone and start looking for a phone number. Before Jason's pool house, before Mark's office, before you dragged our friends into this. Oh, come on. Don't be so... She starts, but she doesn't sound so sure of herself. It's just one of those things that happens in a marriage, all right? People fuck up. I dialed Victor's number and looked at her. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk or putting on the wrong pair of socks. You made a choice. 1,000 of them. I'm going to call Victor, I say, and I'm going to stay at a hotel. You can stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we're going to discuss how we're going to proceed. But for now, I can't look at you without seeing them. The phone began to ring as tears started to well up in Sarah's eyes, finally breaking through her ironclad facade. Outside, The leaves continued to fall from the trees, unaware of the fact that they were witnessing the end of something that took years to build and only moments to destroy. The drive to the hotel went by in a blur. I had driven this route many times before, but this time it felt different. I kept thinking about those last minutes in our kitchen, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that was creeping up on me. It was the first time I had slept away from home since our honeymoon, 7 years ago. I parked the car in the hotel parking lot and looked at the clock. It was 2:15 a.m. and the rain was beginning to fall. There was something about the sterile silence of the hotel room that made me feel uneasy. I wasn't used to it. I was used to the walls creaking, the sound of Sarah's white noise machine coming from the bedroom. The only thing I could hear now was the faint sound of people talking in the hallway and the AC blowing warm air out from beneath the window. I picked up my phone and looked at the time, 2:37 a.m. I had several missed calls from Sarah and text messages I hadn't read. I didn't bother reading them now. I tried to go back to sleep, but the bed felt uncomfortable and the silence was still bothering me. I couldn't stop thinking about Jason's pool house. How many times had I looked in that direction and waved at him, completely unaware that my wife was having an affair with him? My phone started vibrating again. It was Caroline. "Mike, just hear Sarah out. Sometimes there's a good reason." I begin to write a response only to erase it and try again. After a few more attempts, I give up. Caroline, who sat at our dinner table, who helped organize our anniversary party last year, who knew all along. The betrayal itches like a rash, spreading all over. My phone began to vibrate again. It was Mark. "We need to have a conversation, guy to guy." I let out a bitter laugh, man to man, as if there was anything manly about what he had done. He was fucking my wife, and I was supposed to just let it go? What a piece of shit. I thought back to all the times she had mentioned stopping by his office to drop off documents, and all the excuses she had made about working late with him. It was all making sense now. My phone rang again, and I saw it was Sarah. I ignored the call and turned off my phone. I stood up and began pacing the room. It was about 10 steps from one side to the other, the same size as our master bathroom, where Sarah's things were. I imagined her there, getting ready for her day, and wondered if she had worn extra perfume on the days she was planning to see them. If she had done her makeup a little more carefully. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Mike?" It was Sarah. "I know you're home. The guy at the front desk told me." My heart races. Of course she found me, I think. She was always good at finding what she was looking for. How else could she have had 3 affairs at once? "Go home, Sarah," I yell, trying to sound more confident than I am. "Can I just talk to you? 5 minutes." I leaned my head against the wall next to the door. "There's nothing to explain. You said everything in the messages. You didn't see everything in those texts. You're not being fair." He laughed. It was a dangerous sound. "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" "Shh," she says. "They'll hear you." "Like Caroline heard you? Like she helped you hide?" I hear a thunk, like she's resting her forehead against the door. "I love you," she says, loud enough for me to hear through the door. "No," I say, sliding down the wall to sit on the floor. "You love the house, you love the lifestyle, you love the idea of us, but me? I was just a means to an end." "That's not true," she says. "You don't know what it was like." What was like, Sarah? Getting everything you ever wanted? Having a husband you could manipulate? Friends who'd lie for you? A roster of fuck buddies who'd help you ruin your marriage? Stop it. Was it fun? Hooking up with Jason while I was at work? Planning your meetups with Mark whenever I went on a business trip? I said, "Stop it!" She hits the door hard, making me jump. "Go home," I say. "Call Caroline. She can help you figure things out." There's a pause, and then I hear her footsteps moving away down the hallway. And then the sound of the elevator dinging and the door sliding open. I sit there on the floor for a long time, staring at the clock as the minutes tick past. 3:15 a.m., 3:16 a.m. I should sleep, I tell myself. I should get some rest. But I can't. My mind keeps replaying the video and all of the others on my phone. I still haven't deleted any of them. The heating unit turns on again, making the room warmer, but it doesn't feel the same without Sarah in bed beside me. I can't believe it's only been 3 months. Or maybe that's the worst part. Only 3 months, and she's already been with 2 other men. Who knows how many more there were? I was so clueless, so blind to it all. Finally, I get up and look out the window. The parking lot is mostly empty. but I see Sarah's car still parked there. She's waiting for me, hoping I'll change my mind, hoping I'll let her in. Maybe I should. Maybe I should just forgive her and let it all go. But I can't. I can't just forget what I saw. I can't just pretend it never happened. I stare at her car for a long time, watching as the fog begins to form on the window. I trace a pattern in the condensation with my finger, trying to distract myself from the pain. But it doesn't work. All I can think about is Sarah and how much I loved her, and how much I still do. Finally, Sarah's car pulls out of the parking lot and disappears into the night. I watch her go, feeling a sense of loss that I can't quite put into words. It's like a part of me has been ripped away, leaving a gaping hole behind. I climb back into bed, fully clothed, and lie there staring at the ceiling. I know I should call Victor again in the morning, but right now, all I want to do is sleep. I close my eyes and try to drift off, but it's no use. The pain is too fresh, too raw. Eventually, I must have fallen asleep because when I open my eyes again, it's morning. The sun is shining through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the room. I sit up and stretch, feeling the stiffness in my muscles from sleeping on the uncomfortable hotel bed. Waking up in the hotel room didn't feel right. The sunlight coming in through the curtains wasn't the same as it was at home. There wasn't the smell of coffee in the air, only the sterile, fresh scent of the hotel linens and the sound of the air conditioning. I looked at my phone, seeing it was just after 6 o'clock. Normally, I would be waking up at this time, I realized. There were 3 more missed calls from Sarah, and a couple from Caroline as well. A text from Mark stating, I deleted it before reading any further. I drove home feeling like I was in a waking nightmare. Everything was still the same, but I was different. A few people jogged by on the sidewalk, going for a morning run. Not fake people, like the ones who had been at the park. These were the real deal. A newspaper delivery truck drove past, tossing out bundles of newspapers. The world continued on, as if nothing had changed. I pulled into the driveway, just as Sarah was backing out. She stopped when she saw me. Our cars paused face to face. Good morning, she says, leaning out her window, in the same tone she uses at galas for sick children. Morning, I say back, because I'm supposed to. I made coffee, if you want some, she says, smiling. We should talk when I get home. Okay, I say, even though I know I won't be here when she gets back. Have a good day at work. You too, she says, and then, I love you. I put my car in park, and she backs out of the driveway. The house smelled like her, and like coffee. She had cleaned up everything except for her phone, which was still sitting on the counter by the coffee maker, plugged in and charging. Just gonna pretend nothing happened, huh? I say, helping myself to a mug of her delicious coffee. At the kitchen table, I open my laptop, and, while sipping on a cup of coffee, I start to browse through the online storage. How are you feeling? He asks, in that professional way that lawyers ask about personal matters. I'm just collecting evidence, I say, creating a new album on my phone called Proof. Screenshots, texts, dates. She's been discreet, but I have enough. That's right, the more the better. Have you looked through your bank statements? I immediately obliged. Cash withdrawals, strange transactions, hotel stays. I see it, I say, clicking on a series of cash withdrawals. Every Thursday for the last 12 weeks. $200. Same ATM, close to Mark's office. Make sure you take a screenshot, Victor tells me. Write down the dates, the amounts, and Michael. Yes? Do not talk to her again, at least not until we're ready. Make her believe you might want to work things out. We need the element of surprise on our side. I hung up and continued my search through the digital evidence of my marriage. I found even more incriminating evidence, receipts from a day spa for the days she was supposed to be out doing charity work, gift shop purchases from hotels I'd never been to, and Uber rides to and from Jason's neighborhood when I was away on business trips. And that was just the beginning. I looked at the time and saw it was getting late. Sarah would be home soon, and I needed to delete everything I had found so far. Just then, my phone rang again. It was Caroline. You're wrong, the text says. Sarah isn't the bad guy. I took a screenshot of the message and saved it in a folder on my computer. Another one for the collection, I thought. I returned to work. I got a few more messages from Sarah throughout the morning, but I didn't bother reading any of them. Instead, I kept looking out the window, watching the leaves fall off the trees in the garden. We were supposed to replant those trees in the spring, Sarah and I. But maybe she'll do it with Jason instead. I glanced over at the photograph hanging on the wall. It was a picture of me and Sarah, taken on our wedding day. She looked so happy in the picture, but now I couldn't help but wonder if she was faking it back then, too. New start, I say aloud, getting up to remove the picture. The wall behind it is a little darker, shielded from the sunlight. It's a rectangle. I got one more text. It was from Sarah. Are you coming home for lunch today? I sat there thinking about her sitting at her desk, maybe in that blue shirt she wore for business meetings. Was she going to see Mark after work? Is that why she was asking? Got something tonight, I reply, crafting another falsehood to add to the pile. I'll be back late. I went back to work, creating new folders for each step of the process. I heard a door slam outside and assumed it was Jason going out for his morning swim. I wondered if someone would be joining him. The kitchen got warmer as the sun rose high in the sky, and I loosened my tie as I sat at the kitchen table, still wearing the clothes from the day before. I still hadn't taken a shower or gotten changed, but I would do that soon, because now I was going to be living in this place by myself. I wasn't going anywhere else. I created a new folder labeled Divorce Strategy and began to fill it with notes. I looked over at the lipstick-stained coffee cup and thought about how many times I'd kissed those lips, not knowing they were lying to me. The day went by quickly as I worked, and I forgot to eat lunch or dinner. The sun set and darkness fell over the house, but I barely noticed. Eventually Jason came back from his swim, and I heard the clinking of dishes as he put Sarah's coffee cup in the dishwasher. I ignored it, continuing with my work and organizing everything into different files and folders. 8:47 p.m. I created another folder titled Mark Office Meetings and saved the files. I was sitting in my home office, the curtains closed to the dark autumn night outside. The only light in the room came from my computer screens and a small lamp on my desk. I'd spent the entire afternoon downloading, sorting, and categorizing the data. Now, I had the complete picture of where Sarah had been since she went missing 3 months ago. My phone rang again. It was Caroline. Mike, come on. You don't know what you're doing. I took a screenshot of the message and added it to the conspirators folder. It was starting to become quite the collection. Caroline's worried pleas, Mark's attempts at bro talk, Jason's silent concern. Making progress? Victor asks. The call window of our video chat minimized in the corner of my screen. Yeah, you could say that. I'm just finishing up his last 12 Thursday afternoons. He's been prolific. Let's see it. I shared my screen, showing a calendar with red and blue dots on it, as well as yellow dots for missing time. Fuck, Victor says. She had a system. Yeah, she did. Tuesdays and Thursdays with Mark, usually in the afternoon, between 1 and 3. Fridays with Jason. I have weekly conference calls on Fridays. The front door opened, and I heard Sarah's footsteps. I gotta go, I say to Victor. She's here. Think normal. We're not ready to make our move. I hung up the video call just as Sarah came up the stairs. She knocked on the door a second later, and I quickly minimized the folders with my evidence. Come in, I say, opening up a random work spreadsheet. Sarah came in a little later. She was still dressed for work, but her hair was a bit of a mess. She'd been at Jason's. You're staying in tonight? Yeah, got some quarterly reports to catch up on. She stands behind me and puts her hands on my shoulders. You've been in here a lot lately, she says, working my shoulders. Everything all right? Yeah, just a lot of work. Year-end wrap-up. I heard her phone go off from her pocket and felt her flinch ever so slightly. Aren't you going to answer it? I ask. It's probably just Caroline with more questions about the gala. The doorbell rang again and she let go of my shoulders. I gotta get this, she tells me, retreating toward the exit. Don't stay too late, all right? She leaves, and I open up my software to monitor her text messages. Not Caroline, I think, but Jason. Are you alone? The text says. Tomorrow afternoon? Sarah. Can't. Mike's been acting strange. Better lay low for a while. I logged the exchange as I had been doing with everything else for the last few weeks. Mark. Lunch meeting tomorrow? Sarah. Not this week. Need to keep things quiet for a bit. You getting scared? Mark asks. Just being cautious, Sarah replies. We'll talk soon. I sit back, looking at the information I've gathered on them. There are 3 different threads going on here. One with Jason, one with Mark, and one with Caroline. Sarah is talking to each of them in a different way, as if she's trying to encourage each of them according to their personality types. Victor texted my phone again. Is the recording program running smoothly? Yes, it's capturing everything live. Great. Let's keep adding to the collection. We'll take it with us when we leave. I X out of the message, hearing footsteps approaching. Sarah is standing in the doorway, wearing yoga pants and one of my old t-shirts. And yet again, I felt as if I was going to throw up. "I got Thai," she says. "Your favorite." "Thanks. I'm not hungry." Her smile fades. "That's too bad. I thought we could have dinner. We haven't really talked since I found out about Jason or Mark. Which one aren't we talking about?" She looked a little shaken, but shrugged it off. "I thought we were going to try to work this out." "Is that why you're doing this? Writing all these messages to process it?" "Wait a second. Are you tracking my phone? Are you still fucking my neighbors?" We stare at each other across the darkness of the office. "I'm trying here, Mike," she says eventually. "But you need to try too." I turned back to my computer and opened up the spreadsheet again. "Enjoy your Thai," I said to her as she left the room, slamming the door behind her. Once she was gone, I got back to work. Every few minutes I found another piece of damning evidence. Each time I did, I added it to the spreadsheet. I was building a case against her. I wanted to catch her in the act so that there would be no denying it. No way for her to talk her way out of it. My phone buzzed one last time. It was Jason. "Hey dude, I think we need to talk." I took a screenshot of the message and made a note of it for later. There would be more evidence tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Meanwhile, I was slowly building my own case against them. One final folder I created was labeled Endgame. I was up late that night, and finally, once my eyes began to hurt from staring at screens for too long, I went outside. I couldn't sleep, I knew that, so I thought a walk might help. I wanted to clear my head and think about everything I'd read, and I wanted to process it all in my mind. I walked for a long time, until the sun began to come up and I found myself on a familiar street. The air is crisp and cold as I walk along Maple Avenue, my breath visible in front of my face. I barely slept last night after going through all the evidence files, and I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The sun has just risen, and I know the best place to find Caroline at this time of day is at the Morning Brew Cafe. I peek through the window of the cafe and spot Caroline sitting at her usual table, chatting with some friends. Just my luck. I enter the cafe and make my way over to her table. "Michael," she says, with that familiar fake cheer. "Come over here." I ordered my coffee, waiting for them to settle down and give me a chair to sit in. They had left the seat across from Caroline open. "You're up bright and early," Caroline says as I take a seat. "Couldn't sleep. Had too many fun text messages to catch up on." She hesitated for a second, and I saw the other women at the table look at each other. "How's Sarah?" Susan asks cautiously. I took a drink of my coffee. "She's good. Busy with her charity work." "The gala stuff has been a lot," Caroline interjects immediately. "We've been staying late at work." "Oh? I thought the gala committee meets on Tuesdays, though, and Sarah's calendar says she's got meetings on Thursdays, too, at Mark's office." She picks up her coffee and it shakes in her hand. "Well, there are subcommittees," Beth says, unconvincingly. "Right," I say. "Would you like to see the minutes from the meeting? On my phone? I have a lot of interesting documents." "Ladies," Caroline said, "I just remembered I have a morning appointment." "But you haven't told us about Jason's new landscaping yet," I say, as if I don't know what they're talking about. Sarah seemed really excited about his pool house upgrades. Silence. Realization. "Oh God," she murmurs. I should get going." Caroline rises suddenly, clutching her handbag. "Don't leave," I say gently. "There's more." She sat back in her chair, looking defeated. "How long have you known?" Beth asks, almost too quietly to hear. I pulled up a folder on my phone and slid it across the table. "Want to see the timeline? I've broken it down into colors for easy reference." "Beth, don't look at that," Caroline said, snatching the phone away before she could reach it. "For what thing, Caroline? For public? Like the public restaurant you met Sarah at last week to help her organize her schedule with Jason's." She looks pale. "Hey, I gotta go pick up the kids," Susan says, getting to her feet. "Your kids are at school," I say, "just like they were when you covered for Sarah at the spa last month." She stopped in her tracks and sat back down. "What do you want, Michael?" Caroline demands, turning back to face him. I took a sip of my coffee and sat back, thinking about it. Then I said, "What do I want? I want to expose Sarah for who she really is." "But she's our friend," Beth protests feebly. "Was she your friend when she was fucking your husband 2 years ago?" Beth dropped her coffee cup on the floor, causing people to look over. Yeah, I keep going, voice low. I saw those texts too. Want to see? She began to cry and picked up her purse, running out the door. You're ruining people's lives, Caroline says. No, Caroline. I'm telling people the truth. Sarah ruined people's lives. You guys just helped her bury them. I stood up from my chair, leaving my coffee unfinished. Oh, and Caroline, check your email. I sent you some screenshots of your conversations with Sarah. I'm sure your husband would love to hear about them at your dinner party tonight. With a chime of the doorbell, I left the cafe and walked out into the chilly morning. I heard their voices as I exited the coffee shop, a chair scraping along the floor, and knew that the perfect little world they had built for themselves was starting to fall apart. Outside, I picked up my phone. Mark was calling me. We need to talk, right now. I smiled as I looked at the building on the other side of the road. I still had plenty of time to spread the truth today, I thought, and a few hours later, when the sun was high enough in the sky to start melting the thin layer of frost covering the streets, the truth was out there, slowly but surely eating away the carefully constructed layers of lies that had kept my wife safe for so long. It was going to be a warm day, I thought, but it was going to be even warmer tomorrow. The day came and went. I spent it speaking to as many people as possible, making sure that they understood the full extent of my wife's betrayal. By the time the sun set, I was on my way home, knowing that my actions would have set off a chain reaction that would eventually reach my wife. I was eager to see what she had to say about it. It was late when I got home. My wife was already there. I noticed her car was in the driveway when I pulled in. I thought about how I'd spent the day trying to make her look bad to everyone at work, and I felt a little guilty. For some reason, she wasn't downstairs. The house was eerily quiet when I walked in. I know what you're doing. Sarah stares at me. She was still wearing the clothes she had gone to work in, but her hair was a mess and her mascara hinted at crying. Long day? I asked casually, removing my tie. Don't. She walks closer. Caroline called. So did Beth. Even Susan's husband left me a voicemail. I walked past her into the living room. There was a glass of wine on the coffee table, half finished. Sounds like you've had a busy day, I said. You're ruining everything I've created. Everything you've created? I turned to her. Funny you use that word. She was right behind me. Our friends, Mike. You're turning our friends against me. I'm just being honest, Sarah. Friends share things, don't they? I noticed that she's lit the fireplace, even though it's not exactly cold outside. You don't know what you're playing with, she says, brushing her honey blonde hair back. The bonds we form with people, they're important. Kind of like wedding vows? She winced. That's not fair. That your new catchphrase or something? I sit back in my chair, facing the fireplace. How's Jason's pool house looking these days? She clenched her fists. Stop it. Or Mark? You still doing lunch with him? You like this, she says, her voice shaking. You like seeing everything come undone. I looked at her. No, Sarah. I'm just making sure everyone sees what I see. What is that? You. Not the perfect wife, not the charitable socialite, the woman who made our marriage a community play. She picked her wine glass up and finished it in one gulp. I need to lay down. Headache? You don't give a shit. I watch her walk up the stairs, almost running. When I hear the bedroom door close, I can't help but smile. I turn back to the fire and take out my phone. I have 3 missed calls from Mark, 2 voicemails from Jason, and a bunch of text messages from Caroline. Perfect, I say, and send it all to Victor. My phone buzzed. Speak of the devil. How'd it go? Victor asks, his voice a little playful. Pretty good. They really liked the morning brew. And Sarah? I looked up the stairs. She's starting to crack. She knows something's going on, but she doesn't know exactly what. Yeah, keep up the pressure. We'll submit it next week. But the proof? Don't worry. You've got a very compelling case. Sarah taught me that. She taught me how to keep track of things. I thought for a moment I could hear him laughing, but then it was gone. Good night, Michael. Tomorrow's another day. The line went dead and I hung up. I could hear the shower running upstairs. Sarah was in the shower again. I wondered if she were crying or if she was just beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. I looked at my phone and saw I had a missed call from Caroline. Okay, I get it. You can stop now. I took a screenshot of the message and added it to my collection. The light from the fire cast a long shadow against the wall, making me think of how shadow puppets can look so much bigger than they really are, like Sarah's lies. The shower stopped running, and I heard footsteps crossing the floor above me. They were hesitant, unsure of themselves. The confident, self-assured version of Sarah was slowly giving way to something else, something more primitive. The walls were closing in on her, and she could sense it. I threw another log on the fire. Tomorrow would be another day to sow seeds of doubt. But for now, I would sit here by the fire and think about my next move. There was still so much more to do. The fire was consuming everything in its path, just as I was consuming Sarah's life. She had built her entire life on a lie, and now I was tearing it apart, piece by piece. I looked around the room at the pictures on the walls, pictures of Sarah and me, pictures of our family, our friends, our life together, all of it built on a lie. I took out my laptop and opened up a file I had labeled Endgame. I still had a lot of work to do, but I was getting closer to the end. I spent the rest of the day typing away, planning my next move. I had to be careful not to let Sarah catch on too soon. I needed to keep her off balance, keep her guessing. As the sun began to set, I closed my laptop and stretched my arms above my head. It had been a long day, but I had made a lot of progress. I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the horizon. I smiled to myself, feeling a sense of satisfaction. I was getting closer to the endgame. I could feel it. And soon, very soon, I would have everything I wanted. I went to bed that night feeling more determined than ever. I couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. The next morning, I woke up early and got ready for the meeting. I put on a suit and tie, wanting to look my best. I didn't want to give Sarah any reason to doubt me. I had to play my part perfectly. I got into my car and drove to the other side of the town. I went to Victor's office early the next day, bringing 3 months of research and documentation with me. "Mr. Turner?" The receptionist has a hushed tone. "Mr. Ramirez will see you now." Victor stood up behind his desk as I walked in. "Michael," he says, shaking my hand. Perfect timing. His handshake is formal, professional. "Sit," he says, pointing to the chair in front of his desk. "Let me see what you've got." I put my briefcase on his desk and opened it. "Everything's in order of when they happened," I say, opening folders in a methodical fashion. "Electronic evidence, bank statements, eyewitness reports." He picked up one of the folders. "Wow, you didn't miss a thing," he says, flipping through the pages. "Dates, times, places, ATM visits." "Yeah, well, I learn from the best," I reply sarcastically. "Sarah always said document, document, document." He looked at me quickly. "Keeping your sense of humor, I see." I picked up another file, reading the label. "Where are we?" I ask. He brought the folders over to the table behind me and set them out in a row. "And the prenup? Is it airtight?" "Almost. The cheating clause is pretty crystal clear. No fault, no contest." "She's going to contest, dude." "She'll try. But right here," he shows me the paper. "Section 7.3. Multiple partners. The penalty clause increases by 2x. The crisp fall sun shines down on the ruins of my marriage." "And Caroline?" I ask. "Her role?" "Conspiring to cover up her husband's affair, not a criminal charge per se, but it's enough to implicate her, especially with those text messages you intercepted." Just then, there was a knock at the door, and Victor's secretary came in with coffee for us. "Anything else?" "No, Margaret, no calls." She went out and closed the door behind her. I took a hold of the cup. "What's the plan?" I ask. "We serve her next week," Victor said. "Right before the charity gala she's organizing. Maximum damage." "Exactly. It'll make her look bad publicly, which will make her easier to settle." I took a sip of coffee. "And the rest?" "Mark's company has a morality clause. These files," he says, tapping the folder, "will get him kicked out of his partnership. And Jason's wife, she's on the gala committee. How do you think she'd feel if this got out?" "Caroline?" Victor chuckled. "Her husband's up for city council. You know what this would do to him?" "Everything she created," I say, "all of her plans." Collapses like a house of cards. Victor produces one more document. "Sign this. We can submit it first thing Monday." I sign my name on the line, making it official. "What happens next? After we file?" "She'll be served at work. In front of everyone. Her colleagues and friends will start talking. Stop inviting her to events. Her life, as she knows it, will be over." I get up and look out the window. People are walking down on the street, not knowing that someone is planning to destroy their city on the 12th floor of a hotel building. "Okay," I hear Victor say from behind me. "Last chance. Are you sure you want to do this?" I turned away from the window to look at him. She had 3 months to decide whether she wanted to come back or not. Now it's my turn. He nodded and put all the papers back into one of the folders. I'll make some copies. You should keep these in a safe place. Already done. Saved in several places. In the cloud and all that. You were a good student. He passes me a business card. My direct line. Call whenever you want. I put it in my wallet next to the wedding picture. Just one more thing, Victor says as I turn to leave. Go to the charity event next week. Why? Because pretending to smile while everything you love is being destroyed is the most painful thing imaginable. The elevator takes me back to the main floor. My phone rings. It's Sarah. Remember, you have to go to the tailor later today. You need your tux for the gala fitted. I stepped outside into the chilly autumn air. Wouldn't miss it, I reply, remembering Victor's remarks about perfect smiles and collapsing worlds. The wind blew a pile of leaves across the sidewalk. Just like Sarah's life, they soared briefly before coming back down to earth, brown and dead. The papers in my briefcase felt lighter after handing them off to the investigator. Plans were being set in motion. A week from now, at the gala, Sarah would finally get a taste of what it feels like to have your life ruined. I looked at my watch. I still had time to make it to the tailor. A few days went by. I couldn't wait for the gala. I had to go back to the tailor to have my tuxedo adjusted, but I never got to wear it. 3 days before the gala, Sarah found out about the files. Her financial advisor connected the dots, and then came the phone calls. It wasn't as dramatic as I had envisioned, but it was just as satisfying. Victor's office was all glass and steel with a view of the city skyline. Sarah sat across from me at his large desk, looking more haggard and stressed than I'd ever seen her. We'd been systematically dismantling her life for the past 3 weeks, and it was beginning to show. Victor walked in and took a seat, signaling for us to begin. Sarah's lawyer, a junior associate from Peterson and Mills, cleared his throat. He wasn't their first choice, or their second. They'd both backed out when they saw what we had on her. Before we begin, Sarah says, a slight tremor to her voice, I'd like to have a word with Michael, in private. He looked at me, and I nodded. 10 minutes, he says, getting up. We'll be outside. The door closes behind them with a click. Sarah leans forward, her hands folded on the table. Please, she says, we can fix this. What? The prenup? Your image? Or just the fact that I know everything? She flinched, but quickly recovered. You don't have to do this, you know. We could do counseling, take a break. Like the time you were at Jason's pool house? Or just now in Mark's office? Please. She begins to sob. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted everything to burn? I leaned back, looking at her. You want to know what my favorite part was, Sarah? Reading those text messages from Caroline telling you how to lie to me? That was very helpful. She was only trying to help. Help you cheat on me with multiple partners? Yeah, she was very helpful. Until the city council received some anonymous photos of her husband's campaign manager leaving her house at midnight. Sarah's eyes went wide. That was you? Guess you taught me a thing or two about hiding shit. The shadows move across her face, and I notice the bags under her eyes. Just tell me what you want, she says at last. We can pay you. Pay me? I chuckle. Sarah, this isn't a business transaction. This is your penance. She stands up and begins to walk around the conference table. I'll lose everything, she says. The house, my job at the firm, my good name. Maybe you should have considered that before you made our marriage your own personal daytime drama. She turned to me. And what about you? These people were your friends too. Did they? Your friends who helped you plan your little rendezvous? Who ate with us and laughed at our jokes? Victor came back in. It's almost time, he says. Ready to go? I sit back down and my lawyer lays out the settlement papers. Miss Turner, the young lawyer says, based on the evidence and the terms of your prenuptial agreement. I know what it says, she interrupts. Take a look, he said, pushing the paper towards her. Section 7.3. More than one partner incurs the double penalty. She grabbed the paper from him with a trembling hand. Your house, the investment accounts, your trust fund? Her lawyer wipes his brow. The prenup is very specific. This is going to ruin me, she mutters. No, Sarah, I reply softly. You did that to yourself. One choice at a time. He pulls out a pen from his pocket. It's the Mont Blanc I gave Sarah for our anniversary several years back. Signature here, he says. And here. Initial every page. I hear the sound of a pen scribbling on paper, and with each signature, I see her life falling apart. The gala committee meets tomorrow, she says, looking down at the last page, pen in hand. What do I say to them? Caroline can make something up for you. She's good at that. Her signature is wobbly, but still readable. You're divorced, Victor says, collecting the forms. Congratulations. She stood up, brushing off her skirt nervously. I did love you, she says, in my way. And your way meant fucking a lot of other guys. She went to the door, hesitated, and asked, What will you do now? Tell the truth, you should try it. She leaves the room. Victor starts gathering his papers into his briefcase. Not bad, he says. You really nailed the Caroline thing. Yeah, I had a good teacher. I get to my feet. Sarah taught me well, how to destroy everything. What's next? Now? I have a house to pack up and a life to rebuild, I thought to myself. The gala? I smiled. I'll be there, don't worry. Someone has to make the toast. I glanced out the window. The sun was setting. I saw Sarah leaving the building on the other side of the street, walking away from her life. Just then, my phone rang. It was Jason. Dude, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to... I erased the message, knowing more would come. From Mark, from Caroline, from others. But I wouldn't read them, at least not for a while. I stood on the sidewalk and watched my ex-wife's car vanish around a corner. She was gone, and it was time to get rid of that wedding ring. The months went by. Fall turned to winter. I spent Christmas and New Year's by myself, getting my life back together, and slowly seeing the ripples of my actions taking effect. I got rid of my wedding ring and began to feel like myself again. It was February by the time I got back to my story. By then it had become a bit of a hobby for me to watch everything unfold from my office window. It was a cold February day, and I was looking at some financial documents that had been sent to me by my investment manager. My ex-wife Sarah's name was on some of them, showing a red flag for missed payments and debt. It had been 6 months since we separated, and I was beginning to see the signs of her life falling apart. My phone rang, and I saw it was Caroline's husband, Tom. Appreciate the tip about the campaign manager, his text reads. Filed for divorce today. I saved that message to my growing list of them. I could see the for sale sign on Jason's lawn, visible from my study window. He was moving to Portland, he had told me the other day. The doorbell rang, startling me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked at the screen for the door cam and saw Mark Reynolds standing there, looking nervous and disheveled. Michael, he says, as I open the door. Can we talk? I stood in the doorway so he couldn't come in. About what? I asked. About the morality clause at your firm, or about Sarah meeting you at lunch. Hey, I lost my partnership over that, he said. Is it enough for you? Was it enough for you when you fucked my wife? I just need a reference, to help me get another job, I laughed. You're either insane or desperate. Please, he whimpers, no one will hire me without references, and Sarah's condition isn't helping. Sarah's condition? I sit back up. What's her condition? He looked around nervously. Not good. She was put on probation at the law firm after everything came out, and she's been selling her jewelry to make rent. Looks like karma finally struck. She called me last week, he says, to ask for money. Told me she couldn't pay for her car anymore. I think of her Mercedes, the one we picked out together, probably with late payment notices on it by now. That's your problem now? No, but, he stammers, she's thinking about moving, leaving town, starting over. Great. I shut the door part way. Let me know where you end up so I know where to send the subpoena. Michael, please. I shut the door in his face and watched him walk back to his car. It was a Honda now, I noticed. No more BMW for him. My phone started to ring again. Hey, just a heads up. Sarah tried to become a board member at the hospital. They denied her application. I took a screenshot of it, then poured myself a drink. Sarah gave me the crystal decanter. It was a wedding gift. I began to see more and more posts like this around my neighborhood. People selling their things, trying to make ends meet, their lives coming apart at the seams. I got a text message from my divorce attorney. Sarah didn't send the alimony payment this month. Should I take her to court over it? Not yet, I respond. Let's see how far down the rabbit hole goes. I sit down at my desk and open my computer, searching her name on the society pages of the local newspaper. But there haven't been any articles about her for the last few months. The Spring Gala Committee has a few new members as well, and she isn't one of them. Somewhere in the distance, the doorbell rings again. A few moments later, Caroline is at my door. Come to confess more sins? I ask through the intercom. I saw Sarah today, she says, at the discount grocery store. She was using food stamps. That's very interesting. Did you help her clip coupons the same way you helped her plan affairs? Caroline seems to lose her nerve. All right, fine. You've ruined it all. Are you satisfied? That's not what matters, Caroline. What matters is justice. She's drinking, Caroline says. A lot. I'm afraid she might... I turned off the intercom before she could finish. She stood there for a few seconds longer. Then she turned and walked back to her car, a rental. Tom had gotten the Mercedes in the divorce. Another news alert popped up on my phone. Mark's law firm had made a statement saying they were restructuring after the scandal. I wondered how many other people would be affected by this. As the hours went by, I checked social media occasionally, seeing the fallout from everything Sarah had done. Her own profiles had gone silent, but the ripple effects continued. Relationship statuses changed, friends were unfriended, pictures were removed, and then finally, a message from Jason's wife. Portland's cold this time of year, she writes. At least it's far from her. I pour myself another glass of scotch. The lights are coming on in the houses across the street. I can see a moving truck in front of Mark's house. I guess he'll be the next to go. The whiskey tastes good. I pick up my phone and open the gallery, going to the folder where I'm keeping track of Sarah's downfall. It doesn't matter when I check it. There are always new messages, new pictures, new videos. She's being destroyed from the inside out. Tomorrow, I'll check again, and there will be more. For now, I'm just going to sit here and enjoy my drink and my view of the neighborhood, which is beginning to look very different from how it did a few days ago. My phone buzzes, and I see an unknown number. I'm sorry, the text says. Sarah's new phone, another demotion most likely. I took a screenshot of it and saved it for later, then went back to work. Somewhere out there, I thought to myself, smiling. Sarah was finding out what it felt like to have her entire life taken away from her, one piece at a time, and the wind was howling outside. It was 3 months later that I began to feel differently about everything. The winter had gone and spring was beginning to show itself, and I was beginning to feel as if I didn't need to get revenge on Sarah anymore. It wasn't that I felt sorry for her, or that I forgave her. It was just that my life had changed so much since then. The last of the snow is melting away in Pineville. I go for a walk in Oak Ridge Park and breathe in the fresh air. The trees are not yet in bloom, but the sun is shining more and more every day, and soon enough the first day of spring will arrive. A woman runs past me. I recognize her. It's Jason's wife. She must have come back from Portland. She doesn't look at me. They are all slowly returning to Pineville, those who ran away after Sarah was revealed to the world. My phone rings. It's Victor. Sarah's moving, he texts me. Got a job in Seattle. I stop in the shade of a tree and respond, send her last paperwork to the new address. I sit down on a bench. I remember sitting here with Sarah, talking about our future. Nice afternoon. I glance up and see Caroline standing in front of me. She isn't dressed in expensive clothing anymore. They got divorced a while back. Going somewhere? I ask, not inviting her to sit down. Needed some fresh air. Tom's lawyers are giving me a hard time. As they should. She fidgets, mirroring Sarah's anxious habits. Have you heard about Sarah? Seattle. New job, new start. She wanted me to pass this on to you. Caroline pulls an envelope from her bag. Said it was urgent. I took the envelope, surprised to see him running errands for her after all these years. Old habits, I guess. She chuckles. Most of them did die quite gloriously because of you. There was a single envelope inside with my house key and wedding ring. Do you regret it? Caroline asks, setting fire to it all. You should ask Tom, or Mark, or Jason. I think they'd have a lot to say about the truth. She flinched. You don't think we all lost something in that fire you started? No, I tell her, taking the envelope and slipping it into my pocket. You lost something when Sarah started that fire. I just made sure it was visible to everyone. A young couple walked by, holding hands. They hadn't cheated on each other yet, I thought. Hey, she says. Sarah did care about you, in her own way. Her own way still involved too many other people's beds. Caroline chuckles, but there's no humor in it. I guess we all got what was coming to us. The sun is setting now, casting a warm golden glow over the park. I can hear the sound of children playing on the playground in the distance, the next generation of the Pineville elite, blissfully unaware of the scandal that tore their parents' world apart. I better get going. Caroline says. I have to meet Tom's lawyer at 4. Hope the terms are fair. She took a step, then stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for Sarah, but for all of it. I know, I say, looking her right in the eyes. That's why you're the only one left. She nods in acknowledgement and walks away. My phone rings. It's Beth Hamilton. Ran into Sarah at the bus stop. She's not doing well. I didn't answer him. I just looked up at the treetops, seeing a pair of cardinals flying from one branch to another. The key in my pocket felt heavier than before. I got up from the bench and began to walk again, going down the path that circled around the park. The breeze was getting cooler as the sun began to set, and I saw the path would soon split off into 2 directions. One way led back to the city streets, where I could go home, and the other part I saw led to a riverbank. I decided to go to the river. The water was flowing quickly, and I watched as it carried away the broken branches and pieces of debris carried downstream by the melted snow. I thought of Sarah, moving away to the west coast, and how much she had changed. Everyone changes, though. That's life. We all have our secrets, and we all have our skeletons in the closet. Some of us are just better at hiding them than others. Or maybe it's just that some of us are better at keeping them hidden. I saw another pair of cardinals, just like the ones I had seen in the park earlier. They had found a branch overhanging the river, and they were watching me as I walked past. I thought about Sarah again, and how she had always loved the springtime. She would have loved the sight of those cardinals. Maybe she would see some just like it where she was going. I hoped she would. I reached into my pocket and took out the envelope. It was tempting to open it, to see what Sarah had left for me, but I knew that would only make things worse. I couldn't go back to the way things were, and I couldn't pretend that everything was okay. So instead, I tossed the envelope into the river. It landed with a splash, and the cardinals flew away, startled by the noise. I watched the envelope float away, carried downstream by the current until it disappeared from view. And then I turned around and headed back to the park, leaving the river behind. I didn't know what the future held for me, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the past. I had to move forward, and I had to let go of the things that were holding me back. As I walked away, I felt a sense of relief. It was as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I could finally breathe again. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came next, and I knew that no matter what happened, I would be okay. I thought of Sarah one last time, and I wished her well. I hoped that she would find happiness and that she would be able to move on from the mistakes she had made, and I hoped that someday I would be able to do the same. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the park, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was time to start fresh and to leave the past behind, and I was ready to do just that. With one final glance at the river, I turned my back on it and walked away, ready to embrace the future and all that it had to offer. And as I did, I felt a sense.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. "Take care." That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using narrate. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.